welcome to my channel. Subscribe, listen, and enjoy my stories every day. Late that night, the shrill ring of the telephone shattered the silence in my dimly lit living room. Rubbing my eyes, I glanced at the clock. It was past midnight. This better be important, I muttered as I picked up the receiver. Alex, it's Jeff from the office. We need you back here, now. There's been a mix-up with the inspection documents that could set us back weeks. I can't sort this out without you. I sighed, a wave of exhaustion washing over me. All right, give me 20 minutes, I replied, the frustration clear in my voice. As I grabbed my coat and keys, a nagging sense of urgency pushed my fatigue aside. The cold night air slapped me awake as I stepped outside, but it was not the chill that stopped me dead in my tracks. Across the street, bathed in the warm glow of a street lamp, was my wife, Clara. She was wearing the red silk dress I had given her last month, a dress that now twisted and fluttered around her as she laughed and embraced the man kissing her cheek. The sight rooted me to the spot. A cocktail of shock, anger, and betrayal churned in my stomach as I watched them, hidden by the shadows. He was an attractive man, tall and charming, exactly her type. My heart pounded in my ears, the sound drowning out their laughter. How long had this been going on? The question burned in my mind as much as the image of her infidelity. A part of me wanted to storm across the street and confront them, but a darker, colder part urged restraint. Revenge, a voice whispered, sweet and slow. With great effort, I tore my gaze away and slipped back into the shadows, my decision crystallized by the sting of betrayal. I would play the fool no longer. To begin with, I decided to gather evidence. Every affair leaves traces, and I needed undeniable proof. I'll see you soon, Jeff, I said into my phone, my voice calm but my mind racing. Just had a little delay here. The drive back to the office was a blur of red taillights and whispered plans. By the time I arrived, my strategy was clear. Jeff met me at the door, his face lined with stress. Thanks for coming, Alex. I don't know what we'd do without you tonight, he said, clapping a hand on my shoulder. Let's just get this sorted out quickly, I replied, my mind still replaying the scene I had witnessed. As we walked through the deserted halls of our office, my phone vibrated. It was a message from Clara, coming home late tonight, don't wait up. The irony of the message did not escape me. Inside, I focused on the tangled mess of documents and emails, piecing together the oversight while part of my brain plotted. I would need access to her phone, her credit card statements, anything that could give me more information. As Jeff and I worked through the night, my plan took shape. I would expose her deceit, and she would regret the day she ever decided to betray me. But first, I had to be thorough. No half measures, no rushed confrontations. Clara had made her choice, and soon, she would face the consequences. By the time dawn painted the sky with streaks of pink and gold, the office crisis was averted, but my personal crisis had just begun. As I drove home, the city slowly waking around me, I knew one thing for certain, the storm had just begun, and I was the storm's eye, calm, calculated, and ready to unleash my fury. The morning light filtered weakly through the blinds as I entered our kitchen. Clara was there, humming softly to herself, a stark contrast to the turmoil within me. She looked up, surprised. Alex. You're home early. I thought you'd be at work all morning, she said, coming over to kiss me on the cheek. I dodged subtly, setting my keys on the counter. Had to deal with an emergency at work. It's sorted now. She frowned slightly, sensing something amiss, but then smiled. Well, I'm just making some breakfast. Want some? Sure, I replied, though my stomach churned at the thought of food. As Clara turned back to the stove, I casually picked up her phone from the table. You got a new message last night, I said, eyeing her reaction carefully. Her back stiffened for a moment, then relaxed. Oh? From who? Just a sale ad or something, I lied, scrolling through her notifications to confirm my suspicions. There it was, a message from the same man I'd seen her with, hidden under the guise of a new contact, Maggie. My heart sank further, but I masked my emotions. Setting her phone down, I decided it was time to add new players to this game. I needed allies and eyes outside this house. After breakfast, I made an excuse to head out, driving to my best friend Mike's house. He opened the door, his expression turning from welcome to concern at the look on my face. "Alex? What's wrong, man?" Mike asked as he led me into his living room. I paced, then stopped, facing him squarely. "I need your help, Mike. It's Clara. She's seeing someone else." Mike's face hardened. "You sure about this?" I nodded grimly. "Saw her last night. I need to find out who he is. Can you help me track her without it leading back to me?" "Of course, man. I've got a buddy, Eric, he's good with this sort of tech stuff. We could get him to set up some surveillance, track her phone maybe." "Set it up," I said, feeling the weight of the decision. "I need to know everything." We spent the next hour detailing the plan, and Mike called Eric, who agreed to meet us later that day. At a downtown cafe, Eric, a wiry man with keen eyes, shook my hand. "I heard you need some discreet help. What are we looking at?" "I need to track phone locations, maybe some car tracking too," I explained, trying to appear calm. Eric nodded, tapping on his laptop. "I can set up a geofence alert for her phone, that'll tell you whenever she leaves a certain area. Car tracking will need a physical device though. You okay with installing that?" "Yes, anything," I confirmed, the words tasting bitter in my mouth. "Alright, I'll get you everything you need by tomorrow," Eric promised as we wrapped up. Leaving the cafe, the reality of my actions began to sink in. I was stepping into a world of surveillance and secrets, driven by the raw edges of betrayal. As I drove back home, my phone buzzed. It was Clara. "Can you pick up some groceries on your way back?" her text read. "Sure," I replied, the word hollow. As I pulled into the grocery store, I couldn't help but feel the irony of such a mundane task on a day filled with deceit. The storm clouds were gathering, and I was right at the heart of the impending downpour. By the time I returned home with the groceries, I was fully committed to the path I had chosen. Clara was in the garden, tending to her flowers, her back to me as I entered through the gate. "Got everything you asked for," I called out to her, trying to keep my voice neutral. She turned, smiling, wiping her hands on her apron. "Thank you, Alex. Just in time, I'm almost done here." I nodded, watching her for a moment, the familiar pang of betrayal souring the scene. "I'll put these away then." Inside, I unloaded the groceries, my mind replaying the plan Mike, Eric, and I had set. Every can I shelved, every vegetable I stored felt like a step further into a cold, calculating mindset. The doorbell rang, a sharp echo in the quiet house. Clara called from outside, "Could you get that?" It was Eric, disguised in a delivery uniform, a package in his hands that held more than just ordinary contents. "Special delivery," he said with a wink as I let him in. I glanced around and then led him to the living room. "Let's make this quick." Eric opened the package, revealing several small devices. "GPS trackers for the car, and here are the login details for the phone tracking app," he whispered, handing me a small paper. "Thanks," I murmured, taking the devices and stuffing them into my pocket. Clara's voice floated in from the backyard. "Alex, who was it?" "Just a wrong delivery," I called back, watching Eric slip out the back door. Once he was gone, I took one of the GPS trackers and headed to the garage where Clara's car was parked. I knew exactly where to place it, out of sight, under the rear bumper. The act of installing it, physically tampering with her belongings, made this all too real. Going somewhere? Clara's voice came from behind me, startling me as I snapped the panel back into place. I straightened up, feigning calm. Just checking something with the car. Thought I heard a rattle earlier. She eyed me, a trace of suspicion in her gaze that she quickly masked with a smile. Well, dinner will be ready soon. Don't take too long. Almost done here, I replied, watching her retreat back into the house. Later, at dinner, we ate mostly in silence. My mind was elsewhere, monitoring her every move, every glance at her phone. She seemed normal, perhaps too normal, and it gnawed at me. After we cleaned up, I excused myself to check some emails. In reality, I logged into the tracking app. A map popped up, showing Clara's current location at our home. It was working. Now, it was a waiting game. I barely slept that night, the glow from my phone screen constant as I watched for any movement. Around 2 a.m., the icon on the map shifted. She was on the move. Dressing quickly, I grabbed my keys and followed the signal. The streets were empty, the night eerily quiet as I drove. The GPS led me to a familiar part of town, near the downtown bars, and, there it was, Clara's car parked outside a sleek, modern apartment building. I parked a distance away, watching. After about an hour, she emerged, accompanied by the same man I had seen her with before. They were laughing, his arm around her waist. Fury mixed with cold determination. I snapped a few photos with my phone, the digital click sounding like the final locks into place on my plan. As they drove off, I sat in the darkness, the pictures on my phone glowing back at me. Evidence. Confirmation. Betrayal. This was just the beginning, and there was no turning back now. The storm was here, and I was its harbinger. As dawn approached, the pale light began to dispel the darkness that had shrouded the city streets. I drove back home, the images of Clara and that man burned into my mind. I felt numb, each revelation hardening me further, preparing me for the confrontation that was inevitable. Arriving home, I found Clara already awake, her face showing traces of concern. "Alex, you're up early. Is everything okay? Where were you last night?" My voice was calm, almost detached. She hesitated, her eyes darting away briefly. "I went out with a friend. I couldn't sleep." "A friend?" I echoed, pulling out my phone to show her the photos. "Or him?" Clara's face paled as she saw the pictures. "Alex, it's not what you think. Isn't it? Betrayal seems pretty straightforward to me." She took a deep breath, her composure returning. "Alex, I've been helping plan a surprise for you, with Mike." "Yes, Mike knows him. He's his cousin, Liam, a party planner. We wanted to throw you a big surprise party for your promotion." "A party?" I interjected, the pieces not quite fitting together yet. "Yes, I was sworn to secrecy. I couldn't tell you. We've been sneaking around because we wanted it to be a surprise." "I'm sorry, Alex. I never meant to hurt you." Her eyes were earnest, pleading. I stood there, frozen, as the possibility of her innocence began to seep into the cracks of my hardened resolve. "Mike?" I dialed his number, needing confirmation. "Hey Alex, did Clara spill the beans about the party?" Mike's voice was cheerful, oblivious to the storm he was unwittingly calming. "You knew about this all along." My voice was a mix of anger and relief. "Yeah, man, I thought Clara would have a hard time keeping it from you. Sorry if it caused any stress." I ended the call, my emotions tangled. "Clara, why didn't you just tell me? I wanted it to be a special surprise, something to make you happy." Her voice broke. "I didn't realize it would go this far." The reality of my actions hit me like a wave. I had spiraled into suspicion and revenge without a single thought of trust. I'm sorry, Clara. I should have trusted you. I saw things. I just thought. No, I should have found a way to reassure you. I hate that I made you feel this way, she said, stepping closer. We stood in the kitchen, the early morning sun casting long shadows, mirroring the long shadow that had just passed over our relationship. I thought about all I had done, driven by jealousy and fear. I need to make this right, I said, more to myself than to her. Clara nodded, her hand finding mine. Let's start over. Truly, Alex. Let's rebuild this. Agreed. And maybe, we can actually use this party as a fresh start. I suggested, trying to lighten the mood. She smiled, a genuine, relieved smile. I'd like that. And Alex, no more secrets, okay? No more secrets, I promised, feeling the weight of the past days lift slightly, the promise of healing beginning to bridge the gap my doubts had created. As Clara and I planned our next steps, discussing openly about the upcoming party and what I had misinterpreted, I realized how close I had come to destroying everything over a miscommunication. The true surprise was not just the party, but also the revelation of how deep our bonds could be tested and how strong they could emerge when truth prevailed.